Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week of Moneyline MMA. We have another week of great fights. We have UFC 281, Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. This fight's going to take place on Saturday, November 12th at 9 p.m. South Central District time in New York at the Madison Square Garden Arena. First fight of the night we're going to talk about is the main event, Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. Right now, Israel Adesanya is the betting favorite at minus 196, while Alex Pereira is the betting underdog at plus 152. This is an exciting matchup. This is for the strap. Both these guys have history with each other in their kickboxing careers. Alex Pereira has met up with Israel Adesanya twice and has happened to beat him twice. And that's pretty much the reason why he's got pushed so quick to the title. The UFC knows these two have history. The UFC knows that Israel does not like Alex Pereira, and the UFC knows that Alex Pereira is just hungry to embarrass Israel Adesanya again. I mean, these two have had two wars with each other before, and one of them, Israel Adesanya, was actually piecing up Alex Pereira up until Alex Pereira brutally knocked him out. And that's pretty much what's been the highlight of this matchup, is people keep referencing Alex Pereira knocking Israel Adesanya out and whether he's going to be able to do it again with the smaller gloves. So, yeah, I mean, for someone who is beating Israel Adesanya twice, not in MMA, but in another discipline of a solely kickboxing, that martial art, he's 2-0 against him, and yet he's coming in as the betting underdog in this one. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting one to see the odds. I like to look at these fights going into it just with my own perspective at the statistics in the previous fights and some of the footage of the fights, and then look at the odds afterwards. And I was a little bit off on this one, man. I thought the public was going to be heavy on Pereira after he knocked Strickland out, kind of made him look silly. And Izzy's coming off of a win against Cannonier that I thought was calculated. But it wasn't flashy, right? People just pretty much seemed to jump off of Izzy's boat real quick, even though he won the fight and he looked good. He wasn't throwing strikes that made him look like he wanted to knock Jared Cannonier out on every swing like Cannonier was. And Izzy didn't really care to be that guy that was, you know what, I'm going to take this slow. I'm going to take this the way I trained to do this. And I'm not going to just change up my game plan because the crowd's yelling and wanting me to start throwing haymakers. And that's one thing that I think is going to play a big factor in this fight, Jose. I think it's all about Izzy's mindset. If you ask me, Izzy's the better fighter here. We're talking about UFC, MMA. This is not kickboxing. I get he's 0-2 against Pereira, but honestly, that does not concern me. This is years ago. Both of these guys, going back to my rule about when you're talking about fights that are this long ago, these people aren't even the same guys. They've evolved and changed so much of their games, both of them. And I don't think the only thing that those fights play into effect is the mindset. And I think if Izzy can go into this fight with the straight face and go in just like he did against Cannonier and just like he's done, to be undefeated in the middleweight division, I think he's got a great chance to win this fight. Where he can go wrong is getting a little too confident, getting a little too cocky, going anywhere away from his game plan, hearing the crowd and wanting to get a little flashy in front of the crowd. Those are the things that would concern me about picking on Izzy's side of things. But overall, man, I do think Izzy possesses more skill. He is the same size as Pereira. Pereira's usually a big towering guy in the division over everyone else. Nope, not Izzy. Izzy's even got a little bit more of a lankier reach there. So Alex Pereira does not have any size advantage here, and I just don't know what he's like. Yeah, he's got knockout power, but so did Jared Cannonier. I'm not sure what Alex Pereira brings to the table here that Izzy hasn't already seen elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, matchup wise, yeah, not much of a difference. They're both 6'4", but Israel, yeah, you're right. He does have that 1-inch reach advantage. So I do see that, I guess, to some degree playing to a part. But I mean, even though it's an MMA fight, I mean, both these guys are gonna pretty much want zero business wanting to grapple. I mean, they both have zero takedown average, zero takedown accuracy, and they both sport high in the 70s takedown defense. So I think it's pretty much essentially just going to be another kickboxing match with smaller gloves. I think the way Izzy does win it, though, is if he utilizes his experience in MMA and actually maybe implement more wrestling into his game plan and really change it up, really catch Alex Pereira off guard. Alex Pereira's only loss is also by submission. And that's when he first started MMA. So maybe Izzy, I mean, he's well versed in that department. He's been doing it longer than Alex Pereira, so maybe he can catch Alex Pereira with a submission. But overall, I do heavily think that it's going to be mostly another kickboxing match with a broader set of rules. And uh, the way I look at it, I think Alex Pereira, what he brings to the table is power. I mean, this guy's a finisher. We saw what he did to Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland had no respect for him. And they said, like, you got to respect his striking. Even though he's backing up and not throwing as much, he's accurate. And that's what he did. He was just backing up and letting Sean Strickland walk into his punches, just hitting him slowly and slowly. And then he just found his shot and knocked him out. And the way Alex Pereira, I've seen him knock out people, including Israel Adesanya, he doesn't need to load up much. It's kind of crazy. He just kind of throws a quick one and just knows to put it on the chin and it's lights out for the other guy. He doesn't have to like twerk his body as much and make it obvious that he's about to try to throw a haymaker. Like he's just throwing little small punches, but man, they carry a lot of weight behind them. And not only that, he throws 6.29 significant strikes per minute, while Israel Adesanya throws 3.93. And both Israel is kind of a slow starter because he likes to read his opponents. You know, his first round or two, he doesn't throw much, and it's not until later where he starts picking up, really throwing the high level combos. So that being said, I do think it's going to be, again, a striking match. I think Israel is going to throw faster punches, and I think Alex Pereira is going to bring in more power. And I think it's going to be undoubtable. Like they both are going to bring a lot of stand-up striking knowledge to the fight. It's going to be a heavy kickboxing IQ match. And in this one, I'm going to have to go with the guy, Alex Pereira. I mean, I think he himself is going to be riding a bunch of confidence knowing that he's beaten Israel Adesanya twice in kickboxing before. And even if it was years ago, I mean, he knows, he's like, I know I've done this before and I can do it again. So for that, you can take me with Alex Pereira beating Israel Adesanya. And yeah, I'm actually going to go. It's going to finish. I don't know what round, but I don't know if this can go unanimous decision. So you can have me down for Alex Pereira for this one.
Yeah, and I totally can respect it, and I agree with you actually too as well on how the fight will likely play out on the feet. Neither of these guys are going to be really taking anyone down. I think Izzy maybe, if either one was going to, I think it would be Izzy, but I just don't see. Yeah, I think it's a lot more likely they do a kickboxing match. I just have a few more points here that I want to make before I give my final pick. I will say Izzy's made a couple of changes in camp, according to his coach over in Auckland, I believe is where he trains, or somewhere over there. I don't know. He trains overseas, and he's been there for years. And I guess him and Dan Hooker, I believe. I could be wrong, but I believe it's him and Dan Hooker train in a similar or the same facility. And I've just heard a lot of great things coming out of camp, and that he switched it up. He's not just doing the same status quo. They're specifically like not allowing the media and stuff around. And those are the things that I really like to see, going back to Izzy's mindset. And he's recently said, Izzy's gone on about, this isn't about the belt anymore. This is about beating Pereira. And I think that could be seen as two different directions. Pereira takes the perspective of, yeah, well, now I'm in his head, right? I'm in his head. And I think it's possible that that's the case, because Izzy clearly knows that he's 0-2 against this guy. And it's more personal now, if anything, than the belt. But I don't know, man. I personally have the mindset that Izzy is clear-minded. He knows his goal. And at this point, the belt is an ancillary reward to this personal thing he's got going on. And that could end up biting him in the ass if he does not, if he gets a little straw in the eyes, tunnel vision type situation. But I have confidence. He's got more experience in the cage. I wanted to make the point that Pereira's never been past 3 rounds in the cage. I think things like that are going to wear on Pereira. There's no way he knocks out Izzy in the first 3 rounds. If he does, in my opinion, at least. So that being said, I like it. I'm going with the favorite here, Izzy, minus 188. And he might be one of my locks of the week. Moving forward, we've got a women's strawweight belt on the line. Carla Esparza is coming off of her extremely boring, disappointing, and I don't want to talk about it, fight, split decision win against Rose. And Weili coming in as a previous belt holder, then losing the belt to Rose, being able to beat Jedrzejczyk and get another shot here at the belt. The odds here, one of the biggest favorites on the entire card, but the biggest favorite on the main event card. Weili is a minus 390 and Carla Esparza a plus 280. Jose, it's crazy to see the champion being plus 280, but I think it's warranted. Carla Esparza, you kind of know what you're getting out of her, and it's not someone that can stand up and strike like the best of them. She does have a knockout against Yan Jiaonan in 2021. But in terms of girl with the advantage, with the abilities, the strengths is the word I'm looking for of Weili, I just don't think she can compete. So I'm curious to see what you think, Jose. But this just kind of seems like a wash to Weili's side.
I totally agree with you that Weili, what she brings to the table compared to Sparza is like, I think just overall better striking. Sparza obviously has that strong, dominant wrestling, but I think Weili Zhang Li herself, her grappling is not bad at all. I mean, she herself, I think her she has a 60% takedown defense, and Weili moves so smooth that I'm actually not even worried about her really struggling with Carla Esparza's wrestling. I think Weili Zhang Weili, I think she has good distance in the way she throws her kicks. And in order to land those kicks as effectively as she does, she needs to be consistently stepping to the side and having that distance. And that being said, because of that fight IQ, I think Carla Esparza is going to struggle to close the distance. And I think it's no wonder why Carla Esparza is fighting Zhang Weili. And it's only because no one wanted to see that Rose Namajunas fight again. And I don't know. I don't think this fight will be as boring as that one for sure, because I think Zhang Weili is going to try to regain her crown ASAP. To be honest, I don't know. Like personally, I don't know if this fight will make it all 5 rounds. It'd be interesting to see how Carla Esparza's stand-up game compete with Zhang Weili's.
Yeah, man, looking at it, I actually like that assertion on the fight maybe not going the distance. I think Carla Esparza is kind of a slower starter, so if she was fighting someone else, if it was a rematch against Rose or something, I wouldn't be as confident. But I think you're right. I think Weili goes in there motivated, wanting to get her belt back and get it back fast. She's coming off of a spinning back fist knockout in the second round. And I think she's going to continue to bring it. Maybe not quite a first round knockout, but I would say at least under 3.5 rounds. I think Weili has a great shot of getting the KO here, and that's one good way to get some good returns. Because as I mentioned, Weili is minus 390, so you're not going to get some great returns on her unless you bet a win method. And I'm not saying that you have to bet a win method. Sometimes it is good just to take a more guaranteed take your minus 390 if you want to have a really confident bet. But in the UFC, you just never know, man. We've seen worse underdogs perform better. So for me, I'm taking Weili by KO.
And that, yeah, so there you guys have it. Both Nick and I for Weili Zhang. We both don't think it's going to go to the end of the distance. I honestly have her winning by KO as well. So you can have us both, Nick and I, for Weili Zhang via KO. And that leads us to the next fight of the night. It is a lightweight bout. This is probably the one fight that I'm looking forward to the most besides the main event. It's this lightweight bout between Dustin Porier and Michael Chandler. This is a fight that, it's been brewing up for a while. These two have a little bit of history, which is kind of crazy because I like both fighters a lot. They're both really nice guys, and it's almost like they're just purposely trying to hate each other just for the purpose of this fight. But Dustin Poirier right now is coming into this fight as the betting favorite at minus 230, while Michael Chandler is the betting underdog at plus 176. We recently saw Michael Chandler come off a spectacular KO victory over Tony Ferguson, while Dustin Poirier himself, it's been a minute since we saw him. He lost that championship title match against Charles Oliveira last year in December. So it has been quite some time since we've seen him, but I truly believe that he's got it, and I'm looking forward to this Clash of Titans. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Man, you called it right. I'm so excited for this fight. It's personally I don't know. I love Izzy, so I'm not saying it's the most exciting fight on this card because that to me is always going to go to Izzy as long as he's on it. But man, after, like you said, after having seen that most recent knockout by Chandler, I'm so excited to see what he can do next. He's got so much confidence in his abilities, and I always love seeing his videos of workouts and stuff because he pushes himself, man. And that's a guy I like to bet myself behind. But, we're talking about another guy who pushes himself pretty hard, and he's only lost to champions. Ever, at least if we're going back to 2016, which is at this point an irrelevant date. Dustin the Diamond is just so good, man. And I think that continues. This is the first fight he's going to be in this year. He's coming off of that loss to Oliveira back in December of last year. I think he's going to come in looking really good, man. And so will Chandler. To me, this is going to get the fight of the night pay bonus or whatever it is. This is just going to be an absolute brawl. I don't know if I'm betting under 2.5 rounds, but I'm thinking I'm picking Dustin Diamond, thinking that it might be under 2.5 rounds, man. I'm not thinking of many outcomes where these guys are going into round 3 without some blood flowing and without some serious damage if it gets to that, even if it gets to round 3. So, yeah, dude, I don't know exactly what you're thinking for your pick, Jose, but I definitely lean the Diamond here. As much as I love Michael Chandler and I could support rooting for Chandler, I also love Poirier. They're both American dudes, so either way, we can hopefully see an American dude get to be a top contender in this division to maybe get a chance at Islam.
Oh yeah, for sure, without a doubt. I mean, when you have Michael Chandler stepping in the cage, you know it's going to be a brawl. He's almost like Justin Gaethje, just like what we saw then. These guys are willing to take a hit just to throw their own. While on the other hand, Dustin Poirier, he's more of a technical boxer. He tries to stay composed, and that's actually the best aspect of his game is not his striking in general, but even more specific, his pure boxing, not kickboxing, pure hands. Pure hands. He has great boxing, and I think that's what's going to win him this victory over Michael Chandler because Michael Chandler can get reckless. He has explosive wrestling that we know he's going to use. He's going to try to take down the Diamond. But in the end, Dustin Poirier, he has high-level fighting IQ. We've seen it time and time again, kind of like how he beat Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje has a similar style to Michael Chandler, and Justin Gaethje has bombs. He has knockout power, and Dustin Poirier was able to withstand that barrage of punches and that wildness Justin Gaethje brings, which is going to be something similar Michael Chandler, I think, will bring to the table. And I think Dustin Poirier is going to stay composed and land the combinations and be able to make it an early night and end it before the 3 rounds. So for this one, yeah, you can have me with the Diamond Dustin Poirier winning by TKO/KO.
Yeah, I love it, man. And that is a good point about Chandler's wrestling. It is top tier. And the ways that Dustin has lost against the champions he's fought was getting choked out in the same method by both Oliveira and Khabib. So clearly Poirier has shown that he at least against the best of the best, he isn't able to defend himself from getting choked out. So if Michael Chandler really wanted to prove that he's the best, he could follow suit and try choking Poirier out. And Poirier has some decent statistics, 64% takedown defense. I think that's decent, but he also isn't necessarily fighting a whole bunch of dudes who really know how to. I mean, Khabib, for example, was 7 for 8 on his takedowns. So when you fight somebody that kind of knows what they're doing takedown wise, I guess Oliveira was 0 for 6 though. So maybe it kind of it depends on each fight. You have to take it one by one in that situation. I still lean Dustin Diamond. I think Poirier is going to bring it. And I think Chandler is going to try and do too much on the feet. I personally don't think Chandler is going to do enough of takedown attempts where he would probably be in the advantageous spot, and Poirier will take advantage and show Michael Chandler that he can't be stood with, at least in the lightweight division. Coming up to our second fight of the main card, we've got an old school legend, Frankie Edgar, fighting Chris Gutierrez in a bantamweight bout. Jose, Frankie Edgar has reportedly admitted that this is going to be his last fight in his career. He wanted to go out fighting in New York. He's from New Jersey, so he probably has some sort of feeling that it's about as close to home as he could be in the UFC. Coming off 2 losses against top contenders, Chito Vera, Corey Sandhagen, beating Pedro Munoz, and losing to the Korean, I believe. Yep, I believe that's the Korean Zombie. And then we've got Max Holloway. He's just losing to a bunch of top, Frankie Edgar, like I said, nothing more needs to be said about his legendary status. Let's talk a little bit more about Gutierrez, though. Gutierrez is coming in at the minus 230 slot. Pretty big favorite against the legend Frankie Edgar at plus 176. Man, that's crazy. Just at least looking at this fight without the statistics and the history and this and that. It's like, dang, man, Frankie Edgar's that big of an underdog. But I mean, it kind of makes sense when you look at it. Gutierrez has had a pretty good history in the UFC, but he hasn't really gotten the chance to beat anyone that's a bigger name in the division. Yet he's a pretty heavy favorite, Jose. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. The way I view it is like, I don't think Frankie Edgar's bantamweight stunt has been too well on him. I mean, he's gotten knocked out twice by bantamweights. I mean, this is a former lightweight champ we're talking about here, and getting finished by two bantamweights. Like, this is two weight class below the weight class he used to be a champion in. And before that, yeah, he went down the featherweight challenge for the title a couple of times. But we know the story. He got knocked out by featherweights. Well, he was losing at lightweight, so he dropped down to featherweight. Couldn't get the job done there. He started getting knocked out, so now he's down to bantamweight. He gets a split decision to Pedro Munoz, which is, it's not like one of the, like, no offense to Pedro Munoz, but he's not really a top contender. I mean, he has that win over Cody Garbrandt, but since then he's lost 4 in a row. So he's lost 4 and has won 1 in between, I should say, to Jimmy Rivera. But he's lost, and he's had the no contest to Sean O'Malley. So, yeah, I mean, I almost want to say, like, if he was to take a final fight, I think it almost should have been at 145, because I think that maybe he's older, and I think this weight cut may be too hard on his old body now, and that's why he's actually getting knocked out fast, like more recently within his last 2 fights. So I don't know. Like, he really hasn't shown me anything that makes him that impressive to really win this one against Chris Gutierrez. And the reason I'm going to lean for Chris Gutierrez in this one, because of his youthfulness, and also because he's been, he fights at this weight class. It's his weight class, and not only that, he's 5'9". He's got the size advantage over Frankie Edgar, even though Frankie actually has a 1-inch reach advantage, but I don't know how well that's going to do when he's 5'6" versus 5'9" guy. And right now, what I see is Chris Gutierrez throws more significant strikes per minute. He throws 4.69, while Frankie Edgar throws 3.79. I think that tall guy, Chris Gutierrez, if we can just clip Frankie Edgar on the chin, I think it'd be lights out. I didn't even think about that. I think Frankie Edgar may end up, I would love for him to win and go all 3 rounds, but I don't know. Realistically, if you're putting money down, it's hard to argue against Chris Gutierrez.
No doubt about it, man. I'm not sure I'm extremely confident on it, but I lean Chris Gutierrez as well. He'll be my pick on this one. I'm also a little skeptical, since I mentioned that Edgar said he was going to retire after this fight. I think that maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I feel like that gives Gutierrez, if anything, the motivational advantage. I think Edgar is just more or less happy to go out and fight once more in front of what he feels is his home crowd. I mean, we've seen guys like Derek Lewis really struggle. I mean, yeah, your crowd's cheered for you, but the crowd cheering doesn't give you any extra power on your punch or any more ability to avoid this or those strikes. So I just don't see, it's different when you look at NFL home advantage and stuff like that. It's just not the same because it's just 1 versus 1 here. And in the end, I think right now, Chris Gutierrez is the better fighter. He's got 10 years age difference, but still has a whole bunch of cage experience. It's not like he's 9-1 or like he's got over 20 fights in his pro career. So I think he's steadily improving each fight, and I think he's going to prove it on Saturday night against Frankie Edgar.
Well, there you guys have it. Both Nick and I for Chris Gutierrez. And that leads us to the first fight of the night, which is the last fight we're going to talk about, and it is a lightweight bout between Dan Hooker and Claudio Puelles. Right now, Dan Hooker is the betting favorite at minus 178, while Claudio is the betting underdog at 138. It's nice to see Dan Hooker coming back to the lightweight. We saw him have his stunt going down to featherweight. It didn't. He was a featherweight before too, but we saw him lose to Arnold Allen, and Arnold Allen, obviously, we just saw he just beat Calvin Kattar, but like it was some controversy behind that too because of the injury. But regardless, Arnold Allen came and showed up that night and beat Dan Hooker. And on the other hand, with Claudio, he is coming off a win streak right now. Most notable win recently is a submission via knee bar to Clay Guida, which Clay Guida is a legend of the sport too. And he has a strong wrestling background. So getting this knee bar on him is actually pretty impressive. Yeah, this one, the way I look at it, Dan Hooker, I think I think it's a good choice for him coming back to the lightweight division. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, man, it's gonna be a good fight for sure. I think Puelles, Claudio. I think he beat Jordan Levitt. He's coming off 5 straight wins, and Clay Guida, like you mentioned, that is pretty impressive to submit him that early in the fight. But we're talking about Dan Hooker. He's coming back up a division. I think that's definitely a step that he needed to take. Yeah, so, Dan Hooker coming off of a loss against an animal like Arnold Allen, the current champion, Islam. I think he just kind of realized that he needs to stay in his lane, go back up to the division he feels most comfortable in. And he's getting a tough matchup, no doubt about it, but I think he can get the job done. Claudio is definitely a great fighter, and he has a lot going for him. But in the end, I'll rely on Dan Hooker's experience and his ability to strike. This is a bet I'm not that confident in whatsoever, but my pick will be Dan Hooker.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think for this one, I'm going to go with Dan Hooker as well. I think he definitely, seeing him perform in featherweight most recently and even before, earlier in his UFC career, I think he performs the best at lightweight. So I think this is where he truly belongs. I don't know how Claudio is going to do against going against someone on the bigger side. Like, this is Dan Hooker. He's no Clay Guida. He's not the same size, and he also brings a different body type. He's lengthy. Dan Hooker definitely he has the height advantage, and he also has the reach advantage. So I think the 3-inch reach advantage, including a higher significant strike rate. Dan Hooker throws 4.91 significant strikes per minute, while Claudio throws 1.99. I think the reach advantage plus the striking advantage, and like you said, the experience. Dan Hooker has seen bigger names, tougher guys. That being said, I'm going to go with the favorite, Dan Hooker, like yourself, Nick.
Love to hear it, man. So looks like then Jose and I agree on all 4 of the first fights, and we disagree on the main event. I will say, definitely give us a follow at Moneyline MMA on Twitter, because as usual, we'll be posting our picks on Saturday. And Jose, I'm going to be thinking about potentially switching one of those picks around. I've got all favorites, man. I kind of just realized I'm pretty confident. Definitely not as confident in Dan Hooker, as I mentioned in the end. But I feel like there is a little bit something to say there that I have all favorites. Rarely do all the favorites win on a card. So keep an eye out on our Twitter. I might be posting a different lock or a different underdog. Otherwise, we'll just roll with what Jose's got. But in any case, the current parlay that we've got lined up is going to be the main 3 favorites that Jose and I agreed on. Weili plus Dustin Porier plus Gutierrez gets you plus 157. So go ahead and put a couple bucks down on that, because Jose and I both think that that's going to be pretty reliable. And again, we'll be posting our locks and underdogs on Saturday. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see what happens on Saturday, Jose. We may have a couple of belts changing hands.
Hell yeah, sounds good, Nick. Well, that wraps up the show for UFC 281. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Moneyline MMA to get our final picks for the fights on Saturday. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.